All right. Hello, my name is Spencer,
I'm Vincent.
I'm Toby.
and we're doing Condensity, which is our website for condensing a body of text into shorter amounts of text. So our goal was to create something that would read news articles or basically any other types of text, and then turn it into a quick summary. So we had a few ideas on how to do this first, and we wanted to come out with something that would still have the text make sense, and it would be like it'd be like a blurb in the book. All right, Toby, do you want to talk about what we thought of or what to do?
Yeah, so this document here is our original project proposal and some of the design ideas we had. So for the algorithm, we were thinking of different aspects to include. So some of the big ones that we ended up using from this list were word frequency, sentiment assessment, uh, let's see, stop words were a big one also. Removing like the words that don't add meaning to sentences. The other ideas here are like scraping the web for trendy sources or trendy words and sentences, and using image recognition to um, sort of uh, convey meaning about an article. And we also highlighted having a user-oriented front end to make the sort of condensing experience um, accessible and easy to use for anybody. And that leads us into the website that we decided to go with. So I'll let Spencer talk about that.
All right, so first, in our title, we thought we'd have our cool product name on the top so that it's really obvious what like the site is. And then our nav bar. So in our nav bar, we have our website, our news feed, and we actually combined the about and contact us into one page so that then it looked more impressive, I guess. And then this part with the link, text file, and raw, that's where you choose what type of text you enter. In the end, you could just enter the link and the raw in the same place, which would be the text box down here. And then the other one that was a little bit different was the text file. The text file ended up in about the bottom right corner, and you could choose where you would want to enter the text file. And then we have our slider. That's where you decide how much you want to do. It goes from 0 to 100, and then you slide it to decide how much of a percentage you want it to summarize by. The summarize button summarizes, and once it summarizes, it can also bring you back to the home page. And this went through a few changes. At first, on the side, we wanted to do extra buttons for graphs for the frequency of certain words, and like how the positivity or negativity of a word entered in the website. But later we kind of moved on to develop the newsfeed function. So yeah, that's pretty much this wireframe that we made. So as you can see, this is our Trello board. I mostly worked on front end. So the first week I helped a little bit with word frequency, as well as just making the general structure of our website with HTML and CSS. And then for the second week, sprint 2, I worked on adding the slider into the index, as well as adding something so that you can enter text and text files, raw text, and URLs. And then what's it called? Sprint 3, I started working on, I took part in testing, and I also just commented my front end part, as well as just made some changes to the about page.
All right, thanks, Spencer. I can talk about what I did during this project. I worked a lot on the back end. Uh, when it comes to the algorithm, I was in charge of looking at sentence similarity and um, the word to vectorization. Um, During week two, I began the migration from just having it run locally to EC2, and I looked into Nginx. I also created the news feed during week two off of Toby's web scraper. And then during sprint three, I contributed to testing. And then I also set up the domain. Uh, Over to you, Toby.
Yeah. So as Vinny mentioned, week one I was working on the web scraper, getting that up and running. I also did a good amount of work on the algorithm, setting up the syn sets and um, the logic of how we're going to condense everything. Um, Moving into week two, I was mostly working on bug fixing, still working on the summarizer, improving that, bits and pieces around the website. Um, but yeah, overall, or in week three, I've been working on uh, testing and commenting, cleaning up stuff. Yeah. All right, so now we're going to give you a tour of our code. We're going to start with our web scraper. So for this, we're using at the very bottom the scrape function mainly to get the text from an article given a URL. And mainly we're using the newspaper 3K to get the text from most news sites. There were some we noticed that it didn't work or it was giving us a lot of like ad text or things like that. So for those, we wrote some manual scrapers involving request and beautiful soup. So you can see that we did that for like NPR and the Washington Post. Yeah, there's an example for the Atlantic. Um, it's pretty like find the title, find the authors, find the text. Yeah, once we get the text from that, if our user enters an URL, of course, we use the web scraper and then send that into our summarizer function. So Vinny, if you want to describe that for us.
All right, here's article.py, which holds our summarizer class. And we'll start with the constructor. What we do is we define a lot of various things our class needs, and a lot of lists that the class will eventually need, like the full text, which contains everything, including stop words, or for instance, the paragraphs, which are a sanitized version of the sentences. We also look at words without punctuation, words uh, without stop words, and then we also I can explain the basic structure of our algorithm. We first start by scoring sentences by the words that sentence contains, and we look at word frequency. So if a body of text contains the word city 3 or 4 times, the word city has a score of 4, and now that will contribute to any sentence that contains the word city will contribute a score of 4. But we ran into a problem where um, some words, like the word cities, the plural, wouldn't be counted as the word city. So what we did is we looked at syn sets, and Toby can explain how we came to using that.
Yeah, so syn sets are basically tell us about the definition of a word. Uh, and there's a function that we imported called lesc that gives us this inset of a word given a word and its context sentence. And that helps us differentiate between, like Vinny said, cities and city, but also words that have two meanings potentially. Like, for example, we've been working with an article about whales. So whale could refer to like the big mammal that lives in the sea, or it could also be someone who spent a lot of money on something. So we want to figure that out and differentiate between them, and synsets help us do that.
So once we have the synsets of each word, then we create a data frame of words and then their corresponding synset. So look like a long list of, let's say, city, cities, citified, and then the synset will always be city. And once we've counted up those words, we can actually score a sentence. Let's take a look at how we score. So once we find the frequency of the synsets, we add that to the score of the sentence, and then we take a few other metrics into consideration. Toby, you can talk about sentiment.
Yeah, so for our sentiment, what we're doing here in the score is comparing the sentiment of a sentence with the overall sentiment of an article or a body of text. And if the sentiment of the sentence matches the overall sentiment, we give it a boost in score so that the resulting summary better reflects the sentiment of the article. So, and we use the Vader sentiment analyzer to do that.
Another metric we take into consideration is word vectorization. We thought it might be interesting to pay attention to like kind of synonyms within the text. For instance, we used the Julius Caesar Wikipedia article as a test text, and we noticed that when like senator and statesman were synonymous in that article, and we wanted to surface that. So we used the word-to-vec algorithm from Jensen to score words and their most similar words within that body of text. And then if there are highly similar words, then we add to the score. Another metric we also looked at was sentence similarity based on a Levenshtein similarity, and that is right right here. And Levenshtein's similarity allows us to assess the similarity between two strings. So we look at the tokens within that string, and then try to see how similar each sentence is to another. Another metric we took into consideration is sentence similarity. This came up because we were using the speech of Mark Antony in the play Julius Caesar as one of our tests. And we noticed that since it's a poem with a lot of repetition, like Brutus is an honorable man, Brutus is an honorable man was being surfaced too much because the words honorable and man and Brutus were being scored very highly because of how frequently the words were being used. So to combat that, we used the Fuzzy Wuzzy library and Levenshtein similarity to look at how similar sentences were to each other. And then we would decrement sentences that showed a very high similarity to others. And this allowed us to remove sentences that were overly repetitive and made for a more diverse summarization. Toby will talk about the last scoring method we used.
Yeah, so this little bit at the end right here is just decreases the score of really short sentences. Oftentimes when we're scraping, if these slip by, this will filter those out. And usually we want to give precedence to longer, meatier sentences anyway. So
here's the main function of this class, and this is the condense function. Toby can walk you through that too.
Sure. So at the top here, we're scoring each sentence. We're sorting, or we're getting the highest scored sentences. This function takes in a percent. So we calculate the number of sentences needed to condense that percent and then get the highest scored sentences according to that number. And then we sort them in chronological order so that the resulting paragraph makes more sense. We preserve the original paragraph breaks, and then we return a string with the condensed summary.
One of the things we made sure to include in our project proposal was making this a user-oriented application. So in order to give the user access to this class, we served it in a Flask app. And here is our Flask app. And this was the skeleton for our eventual web app. So here we handle various invalid inputs, and we give the user an error message based on if like they don't give a % or they don't give us any text. And we eventually moved and migrated this app to a production server, which is Gunicorn, and then hosted that on AWS EC2 and configured that to have Nginx. And we can actually show you the finished product on the web.
Hello, this is Condensity. I'm Spencer.
I'm Vincent.
I'm Toby.
And this is our project for the Northwest Advanced Programming Workshop. Condensity is a summarizing tool that allows users to summarize text with our own algorithm. Let's see it in action, Spencer.
Yeah, so as you can see over here, we have this wall of text from this Julius Caesar Wikipedia article. You can copy this text, enter it, and then choose using this slider on how much you want to condense it to. Say I want to condense it to 28%. Then I click condense, and then while it takes a while to load, you can see here that this is definitely a lot shorter than before. And it tells you how much it's been condensed by. It took out 18 sentences and about 500 words. You can always press back to go back to the original screen, where you can enter something else, like a news article link, which Toby will be explaining.
Yeah, so instead of having to copy paste the text from articles, oftentimes you can take the URL of a news article, paste it in here, just like you would with the text. Select your condensing percentage. We're going to do 15%. And it'll take a second here, but once we're done, we'll see that we have a much shorter summary of the article. And that leads us into our next big feature, which Vinny's going to talk about.
Yeah, this is the news feed. As you can see, we have an updated news feed with recent articles. Every hour, we're going to be doing the summarization algorithm on the top news articles that we're getting from an API. This allows users to see articles that have been summarized without manually entering links themselves. That pretty much wraps up most of our features. You're free to use Condensity at condense-it.com, and we hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot for watching.